Only hours after Benjamin Netanyahu's press conferences in Hebrew and English, multiple attacks started to take place inside of the Gaza Strip by the Zionist terror forces. One of them was an attack on a journalist's tent next to Al-Shifa hospital, which assassinated and murdered both journalists, Anas Al-Sharif and Muhammad Qurayqa. Anas Al-Sharif is a man who I used to regularly follow on social media. He used to bring raw news live on a day-to-day basis, and he was one of the strongest voices in Gaza, highlighting the level of suffering of the Palestinian people inside of the Gaza Strip. This one is Anas Al-Sharif, and this one is Muhammad Qurayqa. He was a journalist for Al Jazeera, Anas Al-Sharif, and now there are over 200 journalists inside of the Gaza Strip who have been martyred, murdered by the Zionist terror forces. This is the escalation that Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel are talking about. An attack on a tent that has journalists next to Al-Shifa hospital. What were they doing exactly? I'll tell you what they were doing. They were sending the message. They were carrying a message. They were exposing the depraved terrorist Zionists and their genocide and their barbaric, abhorrent crimes inside of the Gaza Strip. Clearly, Israel has no military targets inside of the Gaza Strip. And now with this new campaign that they declared, we started to see exactly what they're targeting inside of Gaza. Journalists and people, innocent civilians. Today, multiple attacks took place all across of the Gaza Strip, with more innocent people being killed. Aid hardly getting into the Gaza Strip. And they're killing more journalists now. What do they think they can accomplish by this? Well, Israel, from their perspective, they think by killing these journalists, who, by the way, achieved their desired goal, becoming a martyr. They are resting in peace now, alive with the martyrs and with the good people in heaven, in paradise, after a very long time of suffering. But what Israel wants and what Israel thinks it can obtain by this are a few things. Number one, they want to kill everyone with an ounce of reach from the Gaza Strip. Anas Al-Sharif was very well known. He had hundreds of thousands of followers across all social media accounts, probably millions. And the man was sending the messages as they are, was reporting everything live as and when. He was reporting 15 minutes before he was martyred. On his X account, he posted a news bit, a post saying that Israel is carrying out attacks and intensifying the attacks inside of the Gaza Strip. Why did they target him? So that he can no longer post. But there are a couple of problems here. The problems for Israel, and this was his last post, Anas Al-Sharif on X. Let me share that with you quickly. Relentless bombardment. For 2 hours, the Israeli aggression has intensified on Gaza City. This was his final post on X. 15 minutes before he was martyred, or before the reports about his martyrdom came about. What Israel wants to do with the assassination of these journalists is stop the momentum, stop the messages, kill the icons of journalism, kill the heroes of journalism. These people are heroes, as in the heroes of our time. because without them, we wouldn't have known what happens inside of Gaza. And Israel has been targeting journalists deliberately since the beginning. Israel has been banning foreign journalists from going inside of the Gaza Strip. But what Israel doesn't know is that the martyrdom of these people, of Anas al-Sharif, of Muhammad Qariqa, may Allah accept their martyrdom, is only going to amplify the message. Gaza is not going to run out of journalists and people posting what's happening, whether they are journalists by profession or where they are people, normal people, because you have more than enough accounts to follow and people to deliver the message as it is. Of course, people will have differences, and some of them will have unique abilities. And that's why Israel was targeting the key journalists inside of the Gaza Strip, and now it led to them assassinating Anas al-Sharif and Muhammad Qariqa. And there were reports that another journalist was severely wounded, because Muhammad Qariqa, the man next to him, it was initially reported that he suffered severe injuries. And mind you, Al Jazeera, to this moment, at the time of this recording, and it's 10 p.m. BST, they still haven't confirmed yet. I assume that that will be confirmed later on. But of course, you have more than enough people reporting from Gaza. That shows you how quickly the information gets out. Literally within minutes, the report was out and everyone was circulating. And of course, some mainstream media or like general media accounts as well in Israel. So this is an exact description of what Israel's campaign is for Gaza. Netanyahu came earlier on. He was saying that the media is lying, that don't believe what you're being told. There is no starvation in Gaza. These people that Israel is showing you, that the Palestinian side is showing you, are sick with cerebral palsy. They have, it's nothing. But the Palestinians, they constantly lie. He had a long press conference in English, well, not very long, about 10 minutes, and one in Hebrew, which leads us to the statements that are coming from Benjamin Netanyahu. Of course, the main message in relation to the martyrdom and assassination of journalists is that the truth will prevail. And the truth will continue to prevail up until Zionism is wiped off the face of the earth and apartheid Israel is eliminated. They will not be able to stop this message. They will not be able to stop the momentum. They can bury their heads in the sand for as long as they wish, but at the end of the day, it has already spread to billions of people globally, assassinating, murdering more journalists inside of the Gaza Strip, regardless of the level of their reach and popularity, will not stop this message from continuing to spread up until Israel as an apartheid entity is wiped off the face of the earth. Which leads us to the statements that came from Benjamin Netanyahu. The war criminal, the wanted war criminal and leader of the entity of terror and apartheid state of Israel, he had 2 press conferences. Now you may ask, why 2 press conferences? One of them can be easily translated. No, he wanted to have 2 press conferences. One in English and one in Hebrew. There's a very good reason for that. Number one, it's because he wants to lie. He wants to send a message to the Zionist population in Israel, and he wants to send a message to the global population. In these 2 press conferences, Benjamin Netanyahu outlined 5 principles for concluding the war. There were things that he mentioned in the English press conference, stating that we are looking to get this over quickly because we realize that there's attrition going on with our reserve forces. For the first time, Benjamin Netanyahu is admitting that he has a problem inside of the IDF after it has become a public and open secret. He's finally saying that there's attrition going there, that they basically don't have enough reservists. Reports in Israel saying that some Israelis are receiving order number 8, which is the conscription order, for the 8th time now, because over half of them refuse, and those who did serve before are forced to go and fight back again. In the English press conference, he also said that there's propaganda. They're considering to sue the New York Times. The people that are posted on these international media outlets, they're posting Hamas news. According to him, everything is Hamas propaganda. And some of them have cerebral palsy, and that's why they look skinny. Not because of the Israeli starvation campaign. Not because of that. And he also highlighted these five principles. In English, he said that we need to disarm Hamas, free all the hostages, demilitarize Gaza, Israeli overriding security control, non-Israeli peaceful civil administration. In Hebrew, he said, well, number 1 was different. Everything was the same, but number 1, the main thing was different in Hebrew. The first aim was eliminating Hamas in the Hebrew press conference for the Israeli public. So the man who is crying that people are lying and there's Hamas propaganda, the typical garbage that him and abhorrent leaders like him are still spewing, by the way, because even many Western country leaders are still repeating the same propaganda in relation to Hamas and the Palestinian resistance altogether. And Benjamin Netanyahu is no different than them. But he's telling them that I want to disarm them. I'm not going there to eliminate them. For the Israeli public, he said, no, we need to eliminate them. And for the Israeli public, he's also saying, I was advised in the beginning of the war by a senior security official that we need to be prepared for a scenario where none of the prisoners of war will come back alive. And then he said, I refuse this. And look, I got over 200 and now there are 50 remaining. We want to get all of them back. Of course, he's not saying that he killed a third. He's not saying that he deliberately targeted others who, by miracle, they were not killed. He forgot to say that he dropped bombs that released gases on IDF prisoners of war inside of tunnels, something that mothers of prisoners of war revealed later on, and also exposed the security establishment in Israel and how much they lie. But he's saying that these are the 5 principles. However, not many people were very convinced, especially the population inside of Israel. The people are still in the streets. Smotrich yesterday, he released a statement talking about how he totally lost faith in Benjamin Netanyahu, in how Benjamin Netanyahu is basically deceiving the Israeli public. So he's not really convincing anyone. He's also not convincing Western countries too, because from their perspective, he's going on and expanding this operation. We're seeing how he's expanding this operation by targeting journalists, by targeting innocent civilians, intensifying the attacks against innocent civilians. And all of that is due to the complicity, the participation in the genocide of Western countries, and the lack of action from other countries. The fact that this man is still walking alive inside of Israel and going to other parts of the world, it shows you how he was enabled to conduct this genocide and support it. That's why we're still seeing more crimes happening. And that's why we probably haven't seen the worst of it. We haven't seen the worst case scenario. More devastation can happen. the starvation, this airdropped aid is hardly doing anything, let alone the aid trucks. Netanyahu is boasting about the fact that he allowed so many tons of aid. You know, they talk about tons of aid, disregarding what that ton or two do. And he came up with such blatant lies in that statement. He also brought a picture of aid inside of the Gaza territories, saying that the UN is not picking that aid up. He said, we told the UN, come and collect it. Contradicting himself, he was saying that we want to take down the United Nations organizations that supply aid inside of the Gaza Strip. So you're talking about a psychopathic lunatic here, still roaming around, having these press conferences, and coming up with such blatant lies, and expecting people to believe him somehow. But it's not really working very well for him. It's not working internally in Israel. None of what he's doing now is helping boost his position in the Israeli polls. As a matter of fact, in the press conference, he said that no one should undermine the accomplishments that we had against Iran. You know, don't let those accomplishments fade away. He knows that the accomplishments are fading away. And he again came up with lies such as we destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities and we destroyed their strategic missile capabilities outright, expecting people to believe him. And he's asking the people not to disregard these accomplishments because he knows he didn't use the opportunity to reach a ceasefire and capitalize on these so-called accomplishments. Therefore, they're fading away, and he's being exposed internally in Israel. Partially by the army, by the way, who are lifting censorship of certain information that can get to the Israeli public. And now, certain figures from the Israeli security establishment are saying that Benjamin Netanyahu had multiple options. He had 3 options to reach a ceasefire, a really good ceasefire deal, and he hasn't. And the man is still continuing to spread these lies and spew constant garbage 24/7. And again, primarily because of the complicity and lack of proper action. Israel is still being viewed as a normal country. Benjamin Netanyahu is still being viewed as a legit prime minister. They're not talking about the fact that he's a walking war criminal, that he's a genocidal psychopathic maniac, that he's a threat to global security, a threat to regional stability, a threat to the people of the world, a terrorist leading an entity of terror. They're not talking to you about that. They're not giving you the proper reflection here. And they're also not telling you the full picture about his main allies in his government. For example, Bezalel Smotrich, who has a picture here. This was when he ordered people to go back to an Israeli Zionist squatting base in the West Bank called Sanur. Israel withdrew from it previously. And then he decided to go back there and authorize that because he has power. He's in the Israeli government, and his brother, he had a property there. In this picture, he's standing there with some rabbis. And there's a Hebrew graffiti here that says death to Arabs. Imagine a Palestinian leader or any other Arab or Muslim leader was standing there with religious figures, and there was a statement next to them that says, death to so-and-so. What would they do? Imagine a Palestinian leader did that. Death to them. As in, calling for the death of 500 million people. Arabs altogether. No, not just like Palestinians or, you know, a Palestinian organization or what have you. Not to undermine that, of course. But no, all Arabs. And this is another message to the Arabs. The Arabs who are sitting there. Death to you, death to 500 million people. By who? By the leaders of that country. And why isn't this plastered everywhere, all across the world? Top Netanyahu aid, death to 500 million people. Genocidal entity, threat to global security and humanity. Why don't we see that? To clarify that, no matter how much things have changed, it's nowhere near where things should be. Now, after the statement of Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, there were responses internally in Israel. The families of the prisoners of war are not believing him. The polls in Israel are showing that more and more people are losing faith in Benjamin Netanyahu. Over 40% believe that he's continuing this genocide purely for political purposes. And he's not getting back the trust of the people who he needs and who he constantly tries to please. Like Bezalel Smotrich, who has been talking back and forth with him for the past 3 weeks. Smotrich, in his press conference yesterday, said, I've been with the prime minister daily, and he was reassuring me, and yes, and we're going to do it, and we're going to occupy, and we're going to continue. And then he did that. Of course, afterwards he said, he's lying to you, he's deceiving the public, and I lost faith in him and in his genuine ability to occupy Gaza fully. But there was also a statement coming from the Palestinian resistance. The Palestinian resistance, they had a couple of statements talking about the response that is expected, talking about the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is only expanding the genocide against the Palestinian people, talking about the fact that Netanyahu withdrew from the previous round of negotiations. In the final moment, there was only one step, and they had a more thorough response in relation to this, as we can see in one of the in a Ru'ya News website, who published their statement. It said, we were one step away from reaching prisoner exchange agreement, and Netanyahu withdrew from the last round of the negotiations. A deception that conceals his plans for forced displacement and the destruction of the foundations of life. Netanyahu's statements are a blatant attempt to absolve his entity and army of genocide. They also said that they are a blatant attempt, of course, to absolve the occupying entity and army of international documented crimes and genocide and starvation, and that his talk about liberating Gaza is a deception that conceals his plans for forced displacement, the destruction of basic necessities of life, and the installation of a subservient authority. Hamas also accused Netanyahu of exploiting the prisoner issue to justify the aggression, despite his killing of dozens of prisoners and his reveal of prisoner exchange agreements. Hamas emphasized that the only way to preserve the lives of the detainees is to halt the aggression and reach an agreement, not to continue the bombing and siege. They pointed out that the occupation deliberately closes the crossings and drops aid in dangerous areas or at sea, leading to deaths of dozens. The GHF killed 1,800 Palestinians, and that this is a policy of starvation engineering. And they, of course, confirm that they prevent international journalists to this moment from going in, and that they killed over 250 journalists, and most recently, the Al Jazeera journalist, Anas Sharif, and his colleague, Muhammad Aqriqi. So, from a Hamas perspective, they're clarifying here the position of the organization in relation to the deception of Benjamin Netanyahu and his statement. On the ground, though, there have been very strong developments, especially when it comes to Al-Qassam brigades, the armed wing of Hamas inside of Gaza. Al-Qassam brigades released a video today when they are in a certain part of Gaza. Both Al-Qassam brigades and a unit called the Arrow unit, they published a video of them targeting aid thieves in Gaza. And in that video, they were burning a vehicle that belonged to one of the thieves of aid, as we can see here. And they're clarifying in this video that it's them. So previously, there were like these organizations or other armed groups trying to protect the aid. This is the first time that the armed wing of Hamas, Al-Qassam brigades, are out in the street saying that the era of chaos has come to an end now, and they will carry out field executions against anyone who steals aid from the population in Gaza. The people who steal aid in Gaza are gangs linked with Israel, like the Abu Shabab gang that has ties with the Palestinian Authority of the West Bank too. They steal aid that comes in with coordination with Israel, with coordination totally coming from the IDF, who protect them and pave the way for them to steal all of this aid. But this is sending a strong message from the Palestinian resistance that they're no longer tolerating anyone stealing aid, and it's sending a strong message to anyone who even thinks of dealing with the IDF inside of Gaza. Let's have a look at the remaining part of this video.
المساعدات وضد التجار الفجار من وحدة سهم داخل منطقة الصاروخ. نسأل الله العلي القدير أن يعم على هذه المنطقة. ارجع في قنبلة الآن داخل منطقة الصاروخ ضد الفجار وضد لصوص المساعدات. يحرق الآن داخل المنطقة، يحرق جب للصوص المساعدات داخل منطقة الصاروخ. الآن ابعد عن الجب يا محمد، هيتفجر التانك. ارجع عن الجب. هذا مصير كل واحد خاين. لف علي، لف علي. احنا كتاب القرآن.
So in it, of course, they're saying that this is the destiny of every traitor inside of Gaza. The people are chanting for Al-Qassam brigades and supporting them, targeting the thieves because they steal the aid and they go and resell it at extortionate prices. Ridiculous prices, over 100 times the normal value, or even 1,000 times the normal value sometimes, capitalizing on the people suffering. And they're working in coordination with Israel completely inside of the Gaza Strip.
الآن يحدث داخل هذا ما يحدث الآن داخل منطقة الصاروخ، إطلاق نار ضد الفجار. الآن في منطقة الصاروخ إطلاق نار. ارجع.
So this is an escalation coming from the Palestinian resistance, because in previous occasions, they did not take these measures in that manner. There were organizations that were working independently or potentially coordinating with the resistance, because everything that is even linked to the civilian authority in Gaza, Israel always targets them, whether it's civilian policing, civilian rescue services, ambulances, everything. Rescue services, they still to this day refuse to allow rescue services from getting bodies. So some people were waiting for a ceasefire to just get the bodies of people who have been under the rubble for over a year. But some people were thinking that, you know, the more time goes by, the more people lose faith and hope in the Palestinian resistance. But as we can see, these people were cheered and supported by the average citizens who are suffering because of these thieves inside of Gaza, the traitors who are operating with Israel, stealing the aid only to make a profit out of this misery and catastrophe. With the full knowledge of Israel, by the way, because this is a carefully engineered project. And Benjamin Netanyahu's ridiculous claim of having aid, but that the United Nations wasn't able to come and get it, or doesn't want to come and get it. Why don't you allow the people to get it? Why are there hundreds of trucks waiting on the Egyptian side? Why are you allowing your squatters inside of the occupied territories to destroy the aid? How many videos have we seen of Israeli people jumping on aid trucks and destroying aid, destroying flour, powdered milk, the basic stuff, you know, basic necessity, the basic of the basic. So this will have an effect. It will have an impact on all of the organizations that are still operating in Israel. This is also a direct message to Israel directly. How? The fighters of the resistance coming out in broad daylight during a period where there is no ceasefire, and before Israel tries to expand its operation. And that message is, we are there and we are in the streets. And if you want to come in, come in. We will deal with you. And that's part of the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu was keeping this exit route, because he knows exactly what's waiting for him. And that's why Israel has been conducting attacks purely against the civilians ever since this declaration of the expansion of their genocidal campaign in Gaza, because they have no targets of the resistance. And their primary target is the people, are the people, the infants, the children, the women, the men, the journalists, the voices of truth. So this whole campaign is a lost case for Israel from the beginning. However, and as we mentioned before, Benjamin Netanyahu started the campaign, it will include destruction, because this is what Israel is about, destruction. And that nonsense and that genocide and destruction must stop. But we're still in the beginning of this operation of Benjamin Netanyahu. How long will Benjamin Netanyahu continue with this campaign is a separate story. There are certain reports that have also come in the past few days that the mediators are trying to reignite the talks. Ron Dermer already clarified that we will go back if Hamas surrender to the agreements. And all of this is, by the way, part of the process in applying pressure on the Palestinian side to surrender, with a backup and cover from the United States, from EU countries, and from every country allied with Israel. Any country who's saying that Hamas should play no role and that the Palestinian resistance should be disarmed is giving Israel a backing, even if they're saying that Israel shouldn't continue with this operation, because they're indirectly justifying the campaign. Well, if you're saying that the Palestinian resistance needs to disarm, then you are amplifying Benjamin Netanyahu's claim that I am going to this campaign to make sure they disarm. We don't have genuine criticism here. But the fact of the matter is, Netanyahu in his recent press conferences, he wasn't very convinced in what he was doing. He clearly kept the door open. He clearly isn't getting the backing of his top aides in the government. As a matter of fact, Smotrich today said, if the war stops, I'm out. Although this, the same man is a hypocrite too. He does a lot of U-turns. He just authorized supposedly military aid to go to Gaza with Israeli funding. Now, when we talk about the Israeli funding, you're talking about some businesses profiteering out of it from Israel, who are probably tied with the government. And he also said that no grain of aid will go into the Gaza Strip. This is several months back. And now they've done a U-turn. So if there is some sort of breakthrough in the next few days or weeks, something could change. However, judging by what's happening now, Netanyahu will continue his crimes because clearly he's not getting enough resistance from outside of Palestine. As a matter of fact, what we're seeing now is a population going through starvation and genocide, fighting for their lives, fighting for themselves. And the allies of Israel are demonizing the only group that is standing up and fighting Israel. And they're trying to replicate that in other parts too. So this campaign has the potential to last for several months. But if there is a certain breakthrough, or if Benjamin Netanyahu realizes that it's not going to be effective, the pressure is already mounting, and he knows, and he is confirming now for the first time, that the Israeli army is struggling with this attrition that's happening within the forces of the IDF reservists. Not enough are coming in. People are complaining, and headlines in Israel are talking about how much the IDF reservists are suffering from these repeated calls and that they no longer have capacity. He's going to have to stop. And at that time, he will package the deal in the way that he wants. But in the meantime, the people are still suffering. They are still facing a genocide, and Israel is still getting away with its hourly crimes inside of the Gaza Strip.